Oh, check it out. Shoot my
I like this.
Yeah.
Hello there. I'm George Putnam. I'd like to begin with a fact. A simple yet shocking fact. It is this. A flood tide of filth is engulfing our country in the form of newsstand obscenity and is threatening to pervert an entire generation of our American children.
Under Canadian criminal law, the term pornography occurs only in Section 163.1 of the Criminal Code, which provides a definition of child pornography. Pornographic material featuring consenting adults is regulated through the obscenity provision of the Criminal Code, Section 163. In other words, unlike child pornography, pornographic material involving consenting adults is legal in Canada if it is not deemed to be obscene.
I can't define pornography, but I know it when I see it. That's the attitude that a lot of people have. They don't, in fact, think it's important to define pornography, to discover what it really is. They think they already know it, and so they can go ahead and legislate it, regulate it, debate it.
Mr. Justice Opinka of the Supreme Court of Canada divided pornography into 3 categories: explicit sex with violence, explicit sex without violence, but that is degrading or dehumanizing, and explicit sex without violence that is neither degrading nor dehumanizing.
Section 163(8) of the Criminal Code defined obscenity as any publication of a dominant characteristic of which there is the undue exploitation of sex, or of sex and any one or more of crime, horror, cruelty, and violence.
The obscenity standard is flexible. It responds to shifts in public acceptance of explicit material. Criminal prohibitions of obscenity are viewed by many as inadequate. Many do not find the community standards test to be particularly useful. If pornography is in fact harmful in some way, an objective standard is required rather than a mere subjective assessment of what the community will not tolerate.
Community standards in the United States are decided through the Miller test.
Part of it, the two that speak to community standards, whether a reasonable person in the community would find the material to be appealing to prurient interests, or the second community standard, whether a reasonable person in the community would find the material to be patently offensive. And then the third, which is a national standard, does the material have any serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value?
You tell me how a woman with a penis down her throat who's gagging, how that is in any way art.
I've come to realize that so much of what people object to in pornographic materials is not that it challenges their moral values, their religious values, but that they just think it's in bad taste. And they think that whatever taste they have is, of course, superior taste.
I didn't know I was breaking the law. The first thing is, we're a government of laws and not men. If you don't have a law that's written that says that, okay, if you do this, you will go to jail, then that's a good law. If you have a law that says, well, we might say that this is obscene or we might say that's obscene, but we don't really know in advance, we're just going to maybe decide to prosecute you. That's the first #1 bad thing about this situation, is that I didn't know I was breaking the law. What law? Somebody's going to interpret that I was breaking the law? That's just really bad.
One view sees government regulation as a restriction to freedom of expression.
On the other hand, the government has acquired more and more tools to regulate sexual expression over the last 30 years. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that people who are afraid of sexuality, they are vigorously pursuing whatever means they can to regulate other people's sexuality.
Another view believes government regulation enables the public to determine what is obscene and, by extension, what is illegal pornography.
It's important that cases be brought. Then communities can say this is beyond our community standards and the pornographers know to stay out. If the Justice Department doesn't bring the case, then the pornographers run the community. And who wants to live in a community where the pornographers from Hollywood or wherever else determine what the community standards are?
In Canada, under the Canadian Association of Broadcasters Code of Ethics, it stipulates that content intended for adult audiences should not be telecast during a time period outside of the watershed slot, which begins at 9 p.m., finishing at 6 a.m.
In October 2007, a complaint was sent to the CRTC regarding pornographic content that was aired before the watershed slot on the Fric show. The CBC program focused on the porn industry, more specifically the overconsumption of porn and the modernization of the growing porn industry. The CBC submitted that a viewer advisory was displayed and read by an off-camera announcer several times during the broadcast, as the content of the program may not have been suitable for younger audiences. The CRTC found that the Fric show did not comply with the high standard objective for programming in the Broadcasting Act. This was determined after the program was found not to have complied with the watershed clause. Even though the CBC took reasonable precautions by displaying viewer advisories throughout the broadcast, the watershed clause still applied. The complainant noted there are an abundance of other programs that air before the watershed hour that depict violence and death. There is a double standard between when a violent program is found to have violated the watershed clause and when a program dealing with pornographic violates the watershed clause.
In conclusion, this documentary informs the debate surrounding censorship and the regulation of pornography in North America. The nature of pornography remains a matter of controversial dispute, especially in light of the increased accessibility, production, and distribution of pornography online.
The internet is really, really great.
For porn.
So I don't have to wait.
For porn.
Always some new sites.
For porn.
Browse all day and night.
For porn.
Fly back surfing at the speed of light.
For porn. The internet is for porn. The internet is for porn. Why do you think the net was born? Porn, porn. Hello, Kate Monster.
You're ruining my song.
I'm sorry, we don't mean to.
Would you mind please being quiet for a minute so I can finish?
Okay, okay.
Good. I'm glad we have this new technology.
For porn.
Gives us untold opportunity.
For porn. Sorry.
From your own desktop.
For.
You can research, browse, and shop until you've had enough and you're ready to stop.
For porn. The internet is for porn. The internet is for porn. Me up all night hugging me porn to porn. Porn.
That's gross. You're a pervert.
Sticks and stones, Kate Monster.
No, really. You're a pervert. Normal people don't sit at home and look at porn on the internet.
You have no idea. Ready, normal people? Ready.
Ready? Ready.
Let me hear it. The internet is for
I masturbate.
all these guys on set their flies for porn.
Now I happen to know for a fact that you, Rod, check your portfolio and trade stocks online.
That's correct.
And Ryan, you buy things on Amazon.com.
Sure.
And Gary, you keep selling your possessions on eBay.
Yes, I do.
And Princeton, you sent me that sweet online birthday card.
True. Oh, but Kate, what you think you do after?